Hey everybody, it's Hawk here, and today we're talking about skeletons. Yes, I know I did a video about why they're awesome in an army context, and a lot of that will transfer over to adventuring type stuff. But honestly, skeletons are super underrated as far as enemies go. I mean, we all know how skeletons work, right? It's an animated skeleton that walks at you, possibly wielding a weapon of some description. I mean, all played Skyrim, and we've all seen the ancient Nord two-handed axe-wielding ones, and they just kind of explode across the room when you hit them with just about anything. But honestly, skeletons get an awful lot of crap they don't deserve. Now, I'm not going to go into super detail about what makes up a particular skeleton in a particular fantasy setting, because frankly, well, the details vary somewhat, like how in D&D you can't reanimate a skeleton that's been animated, or at least, by you. That one's debatable. That depends on the spell, frankly, but you get what I mean. And then you go into Warhammer Fantasy, where, you knocked my skeleton over, get back up. Fell over again, get back up. And you just keep doing that kind of ad nauseum until you run out of power. It's not necessary, because all of the generalities about the skeleton remain the same. They're extremely light, they're reasonably quick, they don't completely suck at combat, though they're not astonishing at it. They're good at the basic tier stuff. They're reasonably competent, they take a hit okay-ish, and frankly, they're creepy. That's about all they need to do. They need to be creepy and not go if I look at them, though they kind of do if you have the right weapon. So, skeletons work to fill the mook tier in pretty much all fantasy, and as such, you don't expect them to be frightening. However, if you're actually fighting one, and you don't have, this wonderful mace that I currently have on my hip, you're in for a bad time, okay? Like, let's go for an example here. This axe I have. This is a very nice axe, okay? It is. Now, it's a LARP axe, so the blade is honking. But here's the thing. So I have the axe. I'm going to fight the skeleton with it. Now, this will probably do okay against a skeleton because I'm going to hit it, and there's a lot of force behind it, and I'm going to, knock it around and knock things off and whatnot. But quite frankly, I'm about as effective as doing it like this. Because it's literally just the transference of force that is getting it across. Honestly, I could spin the thing around and just beat it with the haft end of my axe. This actually might be better, because this makes it more maneuverable for me to beat the tar out of it. But of course, it's not meant for that. So, strangely enough, the spear is not your friend in this fight. Okay, well yes, I get to stay a nice long distance away from the skeleton. What am I stabbing? Okay? You stab a fleshy person, and there's all sorts of, soft bits for things to get stuck in. In the case of a skeleton, there are no soft bits for it to get stuck in. Yeah, I can take the spear and jam it into the ribs, but these aren't bones like I have. My bones have give, okay? My bones are not brittle or anything like that. Your bones aren't supposed to be when they're inside of you. Your bones are supposed to be sort of like green wood from the descriptions I've heard from people. They're supposed to flex a little. They have some give. When they dry out, they don't have give anymore. It's like hardwood. It's just snap. That's it. It goes from nothing to snap. It's 0 to 100. So, unless you're actually breaking them, you're basically taking your axe or your spear and stabbing a tree. If that doesn't sound like a fun time, it's because it's not. I mean, to put this in perspective, okay, I just have this for modeling. This is a cardboard tube, okay? Here, I'm going to get a little closer so you can kind of get a slightly better idea here. So, see how thick this is. This is about as thick as my finger, right? Okay, it's about as thick as a thumb bone. This thing is ridiculously durable. Okay, now, yes, this is not necessarily as hard as a bone. This might be harder than a bone, okay? Just bear with me. I can't stab through those things, okay? you guys, those of you who frequent my channel, and if you do not frequent my channel, just go grab any of my videos where I'm cutting, and you see me cutting a bunch of rolled up newspaper. Okay? Not the one with the bill. That one, you will see me just slice the sucker in half because the bill has so much force. Which is why I would actually say this is probably okay against the skeleton. Because there's enough transference of force coming in that even with the blade, I can probably do significant damage to the bone itself. Please ignore that noise, that's my dog. Whereas with the spear, I'm not going to be able to do that. And if you watch with the sword, when I swing, it gets about halfway in and stops. And that is wet newspaper rolled up to be about the thickness of a person's arm, give or take. So when it comes to the skeleton, there's nothing there. It's just bones. And you have to break that. Or, depending on universe of course, smack them hard enough to disrupt the magic, stitching them all together. And honestly, depending on universe, let's say there's a skeleton here, and I hit it, and I knock its arm off, it could, if this is like Army of Darkness, if you've seen that, it could keep trying to stab me. It doesn't need its arm. I could knock its head off. It doesn't need the head. The head is just there, because it's part of the skeleton, and it's going to keep trying to stab me. It might not be impaired whatsoever. I mean, losing an arm is kind of impairing, because it can't hold on to things. Not necessarily, obviously. Of course, this depends on the level of magic, how in-depth the necromancy is, and etc., etc. Which is why I didn't go into details, because that changes a lot. So now I hope you're getting a bit of more appreciation about skeletons, is that depending on the magic, getting rid of them might be exceedingly complicated. Unless you have this thing. The reason these seem to work is because this isn't trying to cut anything. I'm just nailing it as hard as I possibly can and transferring all of the force into just blunt force trauma in an attempt to smack it as hard as I can. Now you can do this with a sword, okay? You could. I don't have a sword with me right now, but you could murder stroke it. Many swords don't do this properly. My Khopesh is incapable of doing a murder stroke. There's no way to hold it properly. My Zhan could probably do one alright, there's enough weight in the pommel. My Dao, I doubt. There might be, but I'm not sure if it would be particularly good at it. I would probably rather want to rip off my belt and take the sheath, or scabbard, more accurately, and beat the thing with that, but I'm not sure how well that would hold up. So, I'm going to recommend this, or, if you can't do that, a staff. I mean, this particular one wouldn't be that bad. I don't know how durable a giant fiery crystal thingy would be on the end of my stick, but if it's a giant rock, go for it. And if you can't get access to that, go out to the woods, go find a coppice of trees, and I mean this in the medieval sense, where they're actually coppiced, as in they're all these nice little poles coming off them, and you cut one of those off. You'll have a nice pole. Or, just go find a nice branch laying on the ground that seems generally sturdy, preferably a newer fallen one, and just kind of trim a handle on it and give yourself a nice big honking club. Ideal? No. Functional? Yes, and you'll be a happier human being. Or whatever you are who happens to be watching this. So, in the case of skeletons, the entire solution to them is just hit them as hard as you can and hope to any god you worship that it explodes across the room when you do that. Because if it doesn't, you're in for a bad time, because they're animated by magic, which opens up an interesting side point of them. Now, I normally don't talk about game design when I'm talking about this. I'm talking about it from an in-universe standpoint. But skeletons do present something very interesting when it comes to this. And it's something I very rarely see explored in games. And it's something I should do as a tabletop game master, because I really love using undead because they're fun. For me, anyway, because I like the whole aesthetic of necromancy and whatnot. I like the whole gothic thing. And I think Warhammer does it well. At least conceptually. Because in Warhammer, you have the vampire counts, who are some of the most famous users of undead. Yes, I know the Tomb Kings, but their undead is different, okay? Just shush. The vampire counts will just keep marching and, oh! A giant Hellstorm rocket battery shot just took out all of my skeletons. Oh, dang it. Wah! And then they all get back up and resume walking. Maybe minus a few of them because they got annihilated and there's, bits left, and I can't really work with bits. Or they take 2x4s and shove them in to kind of make up this section of arm they're missing so they can still attack you. Is it as good? No. Does it work? Sure. That's the interesting thing about them. Unless it's a naturally occurring skeleton, as in it's just, there's lots of dark magic in the area and it winds up animating corpses and they just kind of keep on wandering, and then when you whack them, it takes a bit for the magic to coalesce properly for them to get back up. If there's an actual person, an actual intelligence behind it, sitting in that lair, and they're raising skeletons, what should be happening is I bash in through a room of skeletons, they're done, and I'm moving on to the next one. Within a couple of minutes, the room I just cleared should have skeletons pouring out of it as I try to smash my way through them and then the next one. Which is where their threat comes in. Individually, a skeleton is probably not that threatening unless we're talking, you know, Graveguard stuff from Warhammer. And I'm not really sure if we're classifying them as skeletons anymore. They're more like revenants, because they've got more intelligence and stuff to them. So there's... And it is a walking skeleton, but it's not generally what we refer to as skeletons in there. So, if we're talking about just boring, unintelligent, stupid kind that walk at you like this and then mechanically swing at you, their threat comes from the fact that there's a ton of them! And they're very low maintenance. You just get a crap load of the stupid things and they try to stab the crap out of everybody. And it usually works pretty well because, well, I knock them down and they get back up in a bit. So, ideas for DMs, if you want to be particularly evil, but please scale this appropriately, or put some thought into it. Make it so that in the dungeon of the super ultimate necromancer Boris whatever, the skeletons get back up after a bit. They reanimate after they've been destroyed. Now, keep this to just inside his super evil lair, because then it's kind of fun and it gives him some uniqueness, and the players will probably remember it as, holy crap, it was that dungeon full of endless undead. That was a thing. Because it's fun. And it definitely plays into what skeletons are good at, which is being this silent, well, vocally silent, creaking horde of creepy bony boys who are gonna try to stab you repeatedly. Who you are going to give one hell of a headache with your trusty mace. So, hope you all guys enjoyed that. Hope you're all having a wonderful lead up to Halloween and staying safe. So remember to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment below. Watch out for the skeletons, guys. Peace out.